There's a good chance you're dealing with a middleman, like me, when you get your medicines. That's because PBMs and insurers are often the same company. We even own big chain pharmacies and are buying your doctor's office. We decide what medicines you can get, where you get them, and how much you pay. It's a win-win. For me.
When middlemen own it all, you lose. Visit phrma.org/middlemen to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Tax day's always a pain. Next year could be a nightmare. If Congress fails to extend Trump's tax cuts, middle-class families will get hit with a huge tax increase. That means less money for groceries, less money to pay your mortgage, less money for school supplies, and less money for family vacations. A $1,500 tax increase? That's enough to give families the cold sweats. Avoid the nightmare. Save Trump's tax cuts. Learn more at protectprosperity.com. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity.
Hello, Beat Check listeners. This is Joe Freeman, senior writer from the Oregonian and Oregon Live, and your host today. When President Trump raised tariffs against China and other countries earlier this month, stock markets plunged, chaos rippled through the global economy, and anxiety hit business owners across the United States. The specifics of the tariffs, which soared as high as 145% on China and affected virtually every country on Earth, have been changing weekly, if not daily. And the helter-skelter nature of it all has sent businesses scrambling to adapt to Trump's trade war. In Oregon's trade-dependent economy, the tariffs are particularly tough on the footwear and apparel industry, which uses factories in Asia. And while business giants like Nike and Columbia are plotting to stay afloat, the dramatic shift in policy is potentially crippling for thousands of small businesses in the state, which don't have as much financial flexibility and muscle. What's the mood among Oregon's small business owners? How are they coping? And what does the future look like? Here to answer those questions and more is Matthew Kish, who covers business for the Oregonian and Oregon Live. Matthew, thanks so much for joining Beat Check today.
Thanks for having me.
I don't even know where to begin. There's so much to delve into here, Matthew. But, for knuckleheads like me, let's briefly go over the idea of tariffs. In broad terms, what is a tariff and what is, Trump's kind of main goal with all this chaos?
The main goal, one of the goals at least, is to spur manufacturing to come back to the United States. And we can talk about whether or not that's likely to happen. Mm-hmm. A tariff, going back to the other question, is basically a tax paid on products brought into the country. So a company that brings a sneaker in from Asia will pay a tax based on the tariff to the federal government when that product is brought into the United States. So the tariffs that Trump announced 2 weeks ago, pretty hefty by historical standards. Many of them are on a 90-day pause. Mm-hmm. But the biggest tariffs on China remain, which are at 145% at the moment. We also have kind of a blanket 10% tax on most imports into the country.
Okay. I think even I can understand that. We're going to get into a lot of what's going on with small businesses and small business owners in Oregon. But let's go big picture. You cover everything from sneaker giant Nike to small businesses like Amorpho. How would you describe, I guess, generally speaking, the mood of Oregon's business climate right now in the wake of the tariffs, from big companies to small companies? I can't imagine there's a whole lot of excitement. Is it worry? Is it fear? Is it panic? Where are they at right now?
The mood is very dire right now. There is not an easy solution to the riddle of these tariffs, especially for small businesses. They simply do not have the financial resources of larger companies. They have less access to financing. It's going to be harder for them to move factory operations. So it's pretty grim. Governor Kotek actually had a roundtable yesterday with a lot of small business owners. I think she described what she heard as sobering.
Wow. That's depressing. It must be these people live their lives around their small businesses. We all know people who own a bar or a restaurant or a company or whatever. It encompasses them from day and night. I can't imagine having my livelihood, affected to such a heavy degree. I guess emotionally, it must be pretty draining for these people. We could get into, and I don't know how much the small business owners opened up to you about that, but I guess looking at the finances of it all, you recently chatted with multiple small business owners for a story that ran in the Oregonian and Oregon Live. Is there a way to sum up what the financial impact will be for them? Obviously, an immediate price increase is potentially crippling, but just go through, I guess, the dollars and cents for us.
Yeah, so if you're manufacturing products in China right now, which are subject to 145% tariff when you bring them into this country, you do not have a sustainable business if that's where your production is coming from. If you were to simply pass those costs along, I'll give you two tangible examples. Emma McElroy at Wild Fang, they make apparel. Their button-ups are made in China. They cost $78. If she was to simply pass along the cost from those tariffs, they'd go up to $158.
Ooh.
I don't know many people that are going to buy $158 button-ups. Showers Pass, popular company like Wild Fang, they make rain jackets for cycling. You see them all over Portland, just like you see Wild Fang stuff all over Portland. Their most popular rain jacket is around $320, $350. If they were to pass these costs of tariffs along, that jacket would now cost $600. There's too much cost to be passed along. So these small business owners, particularly in China, have to now find a way to move manufacturing, to eat costs, to pass costs along. And there is no easy way to do any of those things.
So what options do they have right now to stay afloat?
There's four basic options that companies have right now. You can raise costs and pass that along, but as the examples just offered show, like you can't pass all that cost along. It's too much. You can eat some of the costs and your profits are going to decrease. You can ask your factory to cut costs a little bit and make your products cheaper. Factories run pretty lean as is. There's not a lot of fat to trim. What that's likely going to mean is your products will be of less quality because you're going to need to use cheaper materials, cheaper trims. You might even end up that the conditions in your factory decrease because workers pay a cost. You can also move your factory out of China if you're in China to another country. The problem, particularly for small businesses trying to do that, is there are going to be larger companies ahead of them in line trying to move to Vietnam and Cambodia. Those factories in those countries would, I'm sure, rather take an order from a large company that's going to bring them a lot of business than a small company. So it's a very dire situation right now for small business.
Yeah, I guess if you're a small business, you only produce so much product, and while that's a substantial amount, it pales in comparison to Levi's or whatever large corporation you have. So while it's easy for them to kind of maneuver around, these other countries sometimes just don't want that small amount of business.
It's exactly right. It's going to be harder to move a small business manufacturing operations than a larger company.
Okay, so we're currently in a 90-day pause. Has that eased concerns? Has it only made the waters murkier? Where things kind of stand right now?
The 90-day pause has only added to the uncertainty. It has not been received as any kind of reprieve or as any kind of help for small businesses because we don't know what's going to happen in 90 days.
Right.
Why do you want to start the process of maybe moving your operations to Vietnam or Indonesia or China if we don't know in 90 days if those countries could once again be subject to hefty tariffs? So the tariffs that were originally proposed on April 2nd included 46% on Vietnam, 32% on Indonesia. We don't know what happens in 90 days. Some countries could negotiate trade deals. It could end up being that all we're left with is the 10% kind of global tariff on a lot of products, but we simply don't know what happens in 90 days. That has left small businesses particularly kind of in limbo.
Do you get the sense from them that a blanket 10% tariff is manageable? Like maybe even some of them maybe planned for it because this the person ran and he ran on a platform of tariffs. It's not a secret. I just don't think anybody in their wildest dreams foresaw 145% tariffs on the biggest importer.
10% tariffs from the people with whom I've spoken in the past week and a half, 2 weeks is manageable. Businesses can accommodate a new cost of that magnitude. It's not easy. Anytime you add new cost to a product, particularly in garment and footwear manufacturing, which already has fairly thin margins, but it's possible. 145% is simply not practical.
You brought up the kind of the main goal of, or at least Trump's main goal is to bring manufacturing to the United States. I get the sense from your reporting that is something that that small business owners would love to do. Probably behind their ethos of keeping it local and financial or environmental impacts and so on and so forth. I guess, could you detail that further, and then let's talk about it afterward. Back up. Is it possible? Is it feasible?
Yeah, the people I've spoken with in the past couple of weeks, they would love to have a local manufacturing option. So as you know, like that would mean they could create jobs in their community. It would lessen the environmental impact of shipping stuff across the ocean. It would enable them to get products to market quicker, which is a huge asset in the fashion industry, where, if there's a new trend and you can get something on shelves in a month as opposed to 3 months, that's good for your business. But it's a lot tougher to do than many people might expect.
Yeah, I guess there's a whole lot that goes in from finding machines to changing your whole operation. And then when you totally reset the way businesses have been operating for years, if not decades, what do you do in the interim? How do you plug that gap before you even get there?
Yeah, that's one of the huge problems. Like you're going to have a period of time when you have to move manufacturing. And then let's talk about even trying to manufacture kind of T-shirts and apparel here. So Emma McElroy at Wild Fang sensed that the tariff winds were starting to shift a few months ago. And she reached out to some U.S. factories to see if she could get her products made here. First thing she heard was that the minimums were a lot higher. So 3,000 units was the minimum order that she would need to place. That's well above what a small business places with factories in China or overseas.
Right.
Second problem is the cost is going to be 60 to 80% higher is what she heard. The technical expertise, things like welding the seams on a rain jacket, like we don't have that expertise here as much as it exists overseas. The fourth point I would make is the materials are also going to be subject to tariffs. So sneakers, 4 main materials in sneakers: polyester, cotton, leather, and rubber. Polyester, a lot of polyester is made in China. We do grow a lot of cotton in the United States, but a lot of it is milled in China. So it would still be subject to a tariff when it comes into this country to be made into a T-shirt or put into a sneaker. Leather, China is a primary manufacturer of leather. Rubber tends to come from Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Those are all countries that were subject to fairly steep reciprocal tariffs that are now paused, but could be subject to tariffs again in the future. So even if you were to find a factory here to make your products, you'd still be paying a potentially steep tariffs on the materials brought to those factories.
I imagine every small business owner is kind of navigating this differently. Are people kind of relying on supply that they have, in stock, or like how do you plan for the future while still trying to stay profitable now and keep your business alive, I guess?
So there's a 90-day pause on a lot of tariffs. That's really not enough time to order more product and get it here.
Right.
If you're subject to 145% tariffs from China, if you need to order more product, you might need to get a bank loan. I don't know any bank that's going to be thrilled about providing anyone financing to order a product that now has 145% tax on it. So that's a challenge. What I've heard from small businesses in the past week and a half is a range of responses to these tariffs. Some companies are just kind of paused right now. There's just too much uncertainty and they need a little more information about what's going to happen in 90 days before they make any moves. Some people are going to raise costs. They're going to eat a little bit of the costs. They're going to hope they can work with their factory partners to decrease factory costs. I talked to one small business owner that's actively trying to figure out how to get his factory operations moved out of China. That's going to take time. It won't be done in 3 months. So it's a range of strategies right now. There's no easy strategy among them. And it just remains a really difficult time for small business.
I imagine it's a bit of a helpless feeling too, because what do you do? Like, what do you go to your senator? Do you go to your local congressional leaders? What are they going to do? It's not as if Trump is, super willing to listen on this kind of thing. I don't know what it's just I guess it's almost like the Wild Wild West, just kind of winging it. It feels like things are being winged as they go,
Yeah, I asked Emma McElroy at Wildfang about this, and she encouraged people to support small business right now. Prices are going to be going up, and your favorite local brands, make sure you continue to support them, and just realize that the economics simply are going to require your products are going to cost a little bit more in the near future. Governor Kotek, as I said, had a roundtable yesterday. She thought what she heard was sobering. She thought there might be some things the state could do. I don't know of any details yet, but there's a whole lot up in the air right now.
There sure is. Yeah, I received an email last week from Portland Gear, a celebrated local apparel company. They're saying they're going to be raising prices, everything as of May 1st. So it's coming in 2 weeks. It's, would you want to be a small business owner right now, Matthew? It'd be a tough time right now.
I don't think I have the risk tolerance to be a small business owner. And even now, it's just incredibly difficult to be in business.
Yeah. Pivoting just a tiny bit, we've focused almost exclusively on small businesses, but you also wade deeply into the Nike waters. How is this impacting a global conglomerate like that? I imagine they have a lot of options they're debating, but boy, for someone who generates so much business through Asia, it must be very unsettling.
Yeah, so Nike's stock is down 16% since these tariffs were announced on April 2nd. It was down 14% the day after the tariffs were announced. So Wall Street clearly understands that Nike has an international supply chain that's now going to be squeezed. To give you some sense of the numbers, Nike sneakers, 50% of them are made in Vietnam. 18% are made in China. So what can Nike do that maybe other companies, smaller companies can't do? We've already seen some of it. So in the first Trump administration, Nike was making 29% of its sneakers in China. It has already diversified away from China. Large companies like Nike, because they have global supply chains, they're going to have maybe a little bit easier time with their factories of moving production around. Financing options for them, they're also going to have more of them. They're a publicly traded company. They can issue shares, raise capital. They have lines of credit. Nike has, I think, $8.6 billion in cash on its balance sheet. So they have a lot of financial resources. Larger companies also have teams of people who work on tariffs, and they understand small changes that can be made to products that can reduce your tariff costs. There was a great story in the New York Times a couple years ago about Columbia Sportswear and how they changed the material on the bottom of one of their shoes and reduced their tariff cost on that by, I think, 20 percentage points. So there are ways that big companies, they have more assets, they have more resources, they will be able to adjust maybe a little bit quicker. But again, the 16% drop in Nike's stock price, Wall Street and investors have clearly recognized that they also have challenges that they're going to have to navigate.
And over there, is it adjusting? Is it panic? Is it concern? Where is kind of the attitude there?
Nike hasn't spoken publicly about what its plan is going forward. I was on their website earlier today looking at prices, and prices remain the same. There has been some tariff relief. Consumer electronics were exempted, at least temporarily. I don't know if that's paused permanently. And there's been some talk about auto parts as well. So you wonder if bigger companies aren't going to have maybe a little bit more luck at getting through to elected officials and getting some relief. So that's among the other storylines I'm watching.
Interesting. What was, in talking with all the small business owners, I guess, are they generally concerned that their businesses are not going to make it, or are they trying to remain optimistic, looking long term, or are they too in the weeds and too focused on day to day that they can't even look that far ahead?
I think in order to have a successful small apparel company, you have to be scrappy and dedicated and deeply committed to the work. And if you are that person, and the people running small businesses in Oregon are, you're going to continue to try to work through the problem and find solutions. But there is clearly some fear about what this could lead to if there isn't some relief on the horizon.
And that we do not know if and when or ever it will come. It is so, you never know day to day what's going to happen. And I think chaos is the word that I imagine these people probably feel like they're operating under right now. Matthew, is there anything you want to add before we wrap it up today?
No, Joe, I appreciate the time. I think it's important to help people understand kind of the economics and what's happening, and hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah. Well, Matthew, it's really been an informative chat. I can't thank you enough for joining the show. If you're interested in reading more from Matthew and our colleagues on the impact of tariffs, I'll drop links to a few stories in the show notes, so check them out. Thanks so much for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like this episode, give us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show. And tell a friend. Help spread the word. The best way to support our journalism and stories like this one is with a subscription to the Oregonian and Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/pod support. Until next time, I'm Joe Freeman, and this was Beat Check.